Well, as we reported earlier this week, some First Nation leaders in southern Manitoba are calling for a summit on the leadership of their Grand Chief. This is the second time a non-confidence vote has been requested during Jerry Daniels' leadership at the Southern Chiefs organization. Other Indigenous political organizations and governments have also been in the news this week, dealing with questions around leadership. That's our topic for this week's Truth in Politics panel. Jennifer Laewetz is the CEO of Paskwâw Strategies, and Niigaan Sinclair is a columnist with the Winnipeg Free Press. Jennifer, Niigaan, great as always to see you. Jennifer, we'll start with you, and it's unclear if a Chiefs in Summit non-confidence vote will happen at the Southern Chiefs organization, as the executive is working to set up a sit-down, but it appears on the surface to be about the MOU signed with the Manitoba Métis Federation. Your thoughts on this?
Well, this is the second time we're hearing about an issue with Grand Chief. I'm sure it goes much deeper than just the MOU that's signed. I was reading the CBC article right before we filmed this panel because they had another updated article on it, and it was talking also about the alleged allegations that happened with the disturbance back in December during AFN week in Ottawa. And, I think this is a part of a much larger picture where a lot of the grassroots representatives from our nations, our rights holders and their advocates are starting to get to the point where they're getting really frustrated with leadership. And I think this is just another sign of that. I read Derek Nepenak's comments this morning talking about how they have to protect the treaty rights and the rights holders. And if they continue to make decisions, signing MOUs with the Manitoba Métis Federation and not talking to anybody about it, and they're finding out over Facebook, yeah, I can see why some of our grassroots representation are starting to lose that confidence, and whether or not the non-confidence actually happens is a completely different story.
Niigaan, you wrote about this in your latest column, this latest test of leadership for Southern Chiefs organization Grand Chief Jerry Daniels. You referred to him as a political cat. Your take on this?
Yeah, I was saying that he has 9 lives. If you had asked many people, I think many people would have thought that he would have been removed after the incident in Ottawa. And then there's some allegations of some financial issues. There's allegations of staff removals. There's allegations of things involving certain business dealings. I listed them all off in my piece. When you begin to add all of those up, you certainly start to sense that there is a movement to resist, or at least somehow question the motives of the Grand Chief. The reason that I think this is important is because the Grand Chief doesn't represent rights holders. The Grand Chief represents chiefs and is a spokesperson. So the Southern Chiefs organization doesn't hold any rights for anything. What they do is they take direction from the chiefs. And as Jennifer's pointed out, that you can't just simply make a decision on your own without consulting the chiefs. I was on a phone call with 2 different chiefs yesterday, both from the Southern Chiefs organization independently. And both of them said, this came out of nowhere, this agreement with the Manitoba Métis Federation. I thought it was a good idea when I thought that the Grand Chief had been consulting his constituency. Now I wonder is how many times has the Grand Chief moved without talking to any other chiefs, or maybe a very small select group of chiefs. The fact is that this Grand Chief represents nearly 3 dozen communities, and you have to get the majority of them on board to be able to do anything. And so if there's chiefs that say, I didn't even know he was going to do anything, it's certainly suspicious. And I think I'm not going to call that this is going to be the end of Grand Chief Jerry Daniels, because I would have thought that the last incident would have done it, but I guess we'll see. There's going to be a meeting in about a month where there will be a non-confidence motion, and there is much discussion in a meeting of chiefs this weekend. So we'll see.
Jennifer, SCO, far from the only political organization or government-facing leadership issues. Just this week, Métis Nation British Columbia has suspended its president pending an investigation. The same thing happened with the previous MNBC president. Not to mention what's going on with the Métis Nation Saskatchewan, Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations, an inability to hold an election for the Grand Chief for the Mohawk Council of Kanesatake. Is it a tough time to be a leader right now?
I wouldn't say that it's a tough time in terms of, it's tough for them because they're under all of this scrutiny. I think the scrutiny is warranted, and I think it should be happening. I think it's a tough time for any leader given the issues that we're seeing on the ground that continue to seem to get worse: addictions, mental health, homelessness, all of those things. Something that the Métis Nation actually declared a state of emergency on today. But it is tough in the sense where it's going to be a very, very hard period of time in terms of needing to be selfless and needing to be strong and, put all of your ego and every other issue aside, because we need leadership right now. It is important to know, to talk about the difference between a self-government, which the Métis are supposed to be a self-government, and a group like the FSIN that are essentially a lobbying organization, because we're seeing it almost trickle down through all of these different bodies. They're happening within these bodies that we call self-governments. They're happening within these political organizations that were quite literally structured to be the voice of leadership, especially FSIN and the SCO. But I think it's time that we start, as people, just holding these leaders more accountable. I'm sorry, I have no more apologies, especially we're in a time like this. You're either ready to be a leader or you're not. And I know there'll be some people that say, oh, that's negative or it's toxic to be holding these people accountable. But I know for sure I won't be one of the ones backing down. And I think our people need to come more to the table and start using our voices.
Niigaan, same question to you. Is this a difficult time to be an Indigenous leader right now?
Reflecting back on the phone calls I had yesterday with two different independent chiefs, they both said, I don't have time for this crap. Like, I don't have time for struggling through the drama of organizations that are supposed to lobby and represent chiefs. And what I have time for, or what takes up most of my time, are emergency situations in communities. Boil water advisory, youth suicide epidemics, this massive issue of child welfare, never mind the billions of dollars that are looking to be able to fix or deal or compensate. That is a national lobbying issue of bringing the federal government back to the table to talk about the treatment of children and the driving of them into the child welfare system. Chiefs should be focusing on that, not on one or more Grand Chiefs' personal issues or failure to follow the constitution of their own organizations, or, and we're not just talking about one Chiefs organization. We're talking about many different things that are happening over long periods of time. Now, that being said, I think chiefs are also put into, and Grand Chiefs are put into, very difficult circumstances because they're under-resourced. They're put into very difficult positions by Canada, being expected to act very quickly when our governments are just simply not set up to move quickly. And then on top of that, when you have an emergency situation the chiefs are dealing with, and then you add in pipelines and they have to deal with that, what are you going to choose? And then on top of that, a bunch of money that's all now coming towards the areas of chiefs. I've never met a chief that didn't get in the business of being a chief for the right reasons. I've never met that one. I've never met a chief that's evil. But I have met chiefs that have been coerced by the system, that have been burnt out. And I've met chiefs that have been allured by several vices by the job.
Jennifer, we now know the cost to search a Winnipeg area landfill for the remains of Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron. Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew announcing the search cost $18 million. Original estimates were anywhere from $84 million to $184 million, and that it could take 3 years. This took just a couple of months. Your thoughts on it all?
Well, it's obviously a lot less than, we were hearing the numbers before it even took place as a justification not to do it. I'll say what I said, the last time we had talked about this, is that I can't morally put a price on human life, and also what it takes to grieve and bring somebody's remains back home, or even to find them. So for me, I can't in good conscience say that's a lot of money, or you know what I mean? Like I'm hoping that it sets the precedent that we are showcasing not only Canada, but the world, that we care about our people and we care about our women, and that there is no price tag attached to doing the right thing and bringing justice to these families. So I 100% stand behind the cost that it took to find these women, and also to search the landfill. And going forward, it's the same thing. All the resources that are needed to get to the bottom of disappearances, especially when we're hearing about the reports that we just talked about on the last panel, on how many of our women are going missing and are vulnerable. So I think we need to be prioritizing that, putting in the resources, and not diminishing the budgets that are necessary to bring action to these things.
Of course, there were a lot of politics around this as came up during a provincial election. Niigaan, in a statement to APTN News, Premier Canoe took a shot at the PC party and said the PCs and their new leader should tell Manitobans why they put up billboard ads exaggerating the cost of the search by 10 times. Fair game to keep the politics in this?
Well, it would be hard not to, because it was the PC party that did make it into a political issue. This should never been a political issue, and also shouldn't have been an issue of feasibility. So the City of Winnipeg Police, former police chief Danny Smythe, has much to blame for that, using the word feasible when it discussed any notion for the reasons that Jen spoke about just a minute ago. It was the PC party who made this political in the first place, and perhaps we expect sometimes the premier to make a higher level choice. He also is running for office, or one of his members, sorry. There is a by-election taking place within the province of Manitoba right now. So seeking political points certainly is in the context of the time period. Two things. First is this did not take the amount of money. It was not as dangerous. And this did not take all the provincial resources that the previous government had threatened that it did. So we should all remember that, for not just that party, but also for all governments in the future when it comes to searching for Indigenous peoples, because 100%, if this is a mainstream Canadian, there would be no debate, there would be no discussion of feasibility, and there would be no pausing on searching for a person. If that is, if that's an Indigenous person, we wait. If it's a non-Indigenous person, we double down and race over to the landfill and start to search it, and we don't question the price. And the second is, I hope what we've done is we've learned that when a harm happens to one, it happens to all. This has gripped Manitoba's attention, and in many ways, national attention, for going on years. And think about the time and resources that just this panel has spent on it, just the ink at my newspaper, the some amount of public interest, and now billboards that have been produced that have harmed, damaged, and relationships between everyday Manitobans. And that should be something we learn about all of this.
Jennifer, Niigaan, we'll leave it there. Thanks to you both.
Thanks.